I'm Scott Al Miller. I'm the Everyday Vlogger, and today is our first episode. I'm introducing what my plans are and where I want to take this channel. I'm an unconventional vlogger who works in a completely different space than everyone recommends. Like, most people say your content should be short and concise. Mine is long and meandering. You're supposed to blog and vlog once or twice a week, maybe just a few times a month, and make your content really important. But I vlog literally every day. I am monetized and I am a full-time working vlogger, and I want to share that journey and the exciting process of making vlogs with you so you can look at vlogging from something other than the mainstream. So this is a journey I want to take with you and have a creative outlet for me to do something a little bit different than I do in my normal vlogging. So we're going to talk today about my vlogging history. Before we get too deep into vlogging, one thing I want to preface everything with is I'm an unscripted vlogger, and I'm going to remain that way in all of the work that I do. I find that being spontaneous and talking to you in a natural voice is where I get my best results, and it is a lot more fun for me. If I have to work from a script, I absolutely can, but it takes my effort up many times and my enjoyment way down, and it's just not who I want to be. So as you watch this show, just be aware that this is me speaking mostly from the cuff. I will prepare things. I will sometimes have a list to work from, but I'm mostly speaking directly to you. I'm not reading a teleprompter. I don't have prepared words or anything like that. And that is part of my style and part of the fun of doing this. It doesn't mean that that's what you should do. The majority of vloggers work from something a bit more prepared than I do, and that is part of my unconventionalness and what sets me apart. And I think that's part of the pleasure of my audience in the places that I do have a strong audience, is that they enjoy having something a bit different. So I'm really looking to provide a variety within the vlogging space, as opposed to giving stronger and reinforcement of the advice, which is often very good, that's already out there. There's a lot of tried and true paths, but just like traditional television or print media, there is a very strong space for alternative voices, and that's what we're going to present here in the vlogging space. So my vlogging journey started really with traditional blogging, and this kind of sets me apart from most people you're going to see on YouTube. I have a very unique journey. In late 1999, because of other work and life stuff that I was doing, it made sense because I did web design and web hosting as part of my job. It was very useful for me to go on and make a website that I, at the time, would update more or less daily or every few days, and just kind of post what was going on in my life, and it gave my family and friends a way to stay updated, and my crazy dogs love to join my show as well. And I started doing that in the late 90s, and what I would do is just manually edit a web page, and every few days I would totally change what the content was, and I didn't save what was there. A few months later, started getting into the idea that people were actually going on and interested, and they kind of wanted to see what had happened in the past, and why delete it? Why not just add on? And so this is before the days of like WordPress and stuff like that. This is going way back. So in early 2000, I started manually making a blog online, where I'd write down what happened during my day, and you could just scroll down and see old days. Eventually, it became so big that I had to make a second page, and that sounds really dramatic. It eventually grew to greater than one page, and I started paginating manually and shifting the context along, and then eventually, after probably a couple years, WordPress came along, and I got moved into that, and I had to do it manually. I had to take every single entry and manually copy it into WordPress, and it was a lot of work, a tremendous amount of work. And then I started using WordPress, and I essentially blogged, and of course there's days that I missed. It was not completely religious, but I was blogging essentially every day, and have done something along that lines for 25 years. So I'm right now, sometime during this year, I'm going to hit the full quarter century of daily journaling one way or another. Several years ago, especially when we started traveling, I started traveling heavily in 2012. Started traveling for work more. I've always traveled a bit, but mostly it was domestic and not things that people would be interested in. Like, oh, I have to go work in this small city in, Massachusetts today. Well, no one really cares. Like, it's just a small city in Massachusetts. But when I started traveling internationally heavily around 2012, it started to become both in a thing that I was going to a lot of places that could be of interest, and the technology for things like YouTube and making videos on your own, and being able to do that in a relatively simple way started to happen. And so around 2012, I started playing with the idea of doing some videos, but didn't really get into it. And in 2015, we moved to Spain and decided that I really needed to do some video work. It would be just really cool, but it was not meant to replace my blog. It was simply, this could be really cool, and we'd like to kind of, experiment with it. And really, it took me a few years before any of that turned into anything at all. Nearly 4 years. I would take some videos once in a while. Certainly, I had some channels on YouTube, and I would just do these quick little things. And it never got any traction because it was terrible. And I really wasn't putting a lot of effort into it. I did a few, for sure. Like, I wasn't doing zero effort, but it was very minimal, and it got very little traction. That was my idea, that I was going to do like this travel show because we lived on the road. Later, in 2019, I just got tired after 20 years of blogging every day. I needed something to kind of shake it up. And I decided, because a lot of the purpose of my blog was to get information to my dad about my day, because he was the main reader. But I had about 30,000 people reading my blog on any given day, but not a lot of them engaged. It's just kind of people finding the content because they were looking for something in it, because it was huge, right? When you have a work that big, you're going to get a lot of audience, even if the content's not that good. So in 2019, I kind of toyed with the idea of replacing the blog with a daily video. And it took a little bit for me to transition, and those early ones are absolutely terrible, as I just had a cell phone, and I just propped it up on my desk, and the lighting was terrible. And I basically recorded 2 to 3 minutes where I told my dad about the day, so I didn't have to write it down. It took a few years, and I really didn't put much effort into it until about 2021, when I discovered that I was doing some really more interesting things in my life. My financial situation made it make more sense to actually buy a camera instead of working with my cell phone. And I started just naturally improving the show, partially, probably primarily, simply because I had had the time and I'd put in the years of working on it, and I got frustrated with it looking bad and not wanting to watch it myself, and not being anything more than just me talking to my dad. And I just started showing more things, going more places, and I took the effort to get a nice computer to do editing. I got some nice software, Final Cut Pro. I had a GoPro. I started walking around. I started getting more stuff, and pretty quickly I gained a tiny audience, just 100 people, but that was an interesting start. And then after doing that for a year, I suddenly had an explosion where I had a moment. I showed some stuff that to me didn't seem that different, but looking back, I really understand that I had done some very different things with the show that did have a reason for bringing in an audience. And I suddenly jumped from about 100 people to 300, and my views were not viral by any stretch, but there was a really solid organic growth, and it caught me by surprise. And I went back and I analyzed what had I done, which videos had done well in the past 6 months, and found that there was a pattern to these things that I do are really getting some people's interest. And so I at that point, which is now 3 years ago, stopped and said, okay, I need to rethink this and put in an effort to actually target what people are being interested in my content. And I have such a different vibe because of this background. So I've done more journaling, video or written, than pretty much anyone you can possibly imagine. And I have so much more content than almost any one-person YouTube show already, and the pace at which I create it is actually pretty staggering. So it's overwhelming to my audience. I have different audiences on different channels because I create more content than any one channel can reasonably hold. It's a little bit insane. So because of these things, I have this very different vlogging mentality and approach, but I've also kind of brute forced, rather than using the finesse of understanding the algorithm, as people say, which is really just knowing your audience, which I am clueless about my audience, right? And instead of targeting keywords and topics that are trending, I did none of that. I talked about my day until enough people found me that it kind of became a thing. And now I have this amazing audience of really cool people who are part of a community around my life living as a digital nomad and expat in Latin America, and my adventures in travel and the different things that I do. Over the years, my show's become increasingly topical, which is fantastic because it's allowed me to build a real community, and I know a lot more about YouTube, and I take such a different approach to YouTube that it's a different audience than other channels are getting. And I've asked my audience, why? What is bringing you into my show other than some obviously unique content for the people who are not there every day, the people who just pop in because I have a specific topic? I know why they're there most of the time. But for the people who are part of my regular audience, I've asked them, what is bringing you in? And their answers are really surprising, and basically are YouTube creates this content that they generally prioritize, and I make something that is so completely different. I go against every trend. So I pick up, you could call it the misfit audience, the people who aren't looking for the 5 to 15-minute video, for the people who are looking for daily videos, for people who do want to hear the same person rambling on for a long time. It's a completely different thing. And now I have this really topical based vlog, absolutely amazing, with this amazing community, and I'm now absolutely full-time. I make a tremendous amount of content. I'm also a one-person show, which is completely untrue. Valentina will pop on and tell you that she works every day to make the channel happen. But I'm one-man show as far as being on the show, as far as the actual recording, all the camera work is me, all the video editing is me under normal circumstances. Sometimes if I'm really busy or traveling, my daughter will step in and help out, but that is the extent of it. It is really what we generally call a one-man show. Valentina, who works with me on promoting the show, works and does all the thumbnails and some organization and logistics behind the scenes. So she's involved, and it's definitely not just me, but it's the things that you generally think of. That is all me. So all those are things that YouTube generally doesn't expect, and it just makes for a very different show. But because the show's become topical on my vlog, it has made it very difficult to talk about my day, which I don't need to talk about as much as I used to, but because I still have this engaged audience, but it has changed a lot. But it also has made it that a lot of things that I used to like to talk about or would like to talk about in the future, such as video games or cameras or the art of vlogging itself, aren't appropriate for that channel. And so I have other channels where I've explored a lot of different media, where I've explored a lot of different thematical elements, where I'm just doing different stuff. And so here on Everyday Vlogger, I want to explore vlogging itself, because there are very few people who've vlogged as much as me. Even in just the last 3 years, I have to be in the top 0.001% or less. The number of people who do a vlog every day is essentially no one. Those who do multiple per day, because I average something like 4 to 5 releases per day just on the vlog, not my other channels, is essentially unheard of. And I do very long form. So you combine those things and it just doesn't go together. And I do all the work myself. So you keep making it more and more niche. And so vlogging is something that I'm very passionate about, both journaling as a human endeavor, a quarter century of one of the most dedicated journalers you could imagine. The length of the work that I've written is astounding, and you're free to go check it out at sheepguardingllama.com. It is still there. It is not actively kept up to date, but it is absolutely maintained and will, I hope, always be so. And so I'm really looking for an outlet here where I can talk about vlogging and help a community of people who are looking for advice and discussion and information about vlogging, where I can share my experience. I can talk about my challenges, the things that I like about it, what I don't like about it, where I'm looking to go with it, how I do it, and talk to you guys, because there's so many and very good resources out there for people who want to follow the common path and do what the people assume that the algorithm is telling them to do. But for those of us who are looking to vlog or create content in a completely different way, there aren't a lot of resources, and there aren't many voices out there saying, hey, there's a completely different approach you could take. Maybe you should consider it. So it is starting to rain, which is absolutely beautiful. It is a gorgeous day here. We're going to talk all about so many more things in upcoming episodes, but I wanted to introduce myself and give the people who discover this channel in the future something to fall back on and say, well, where did he come from? What is the start? What is the basis of this channel? Coming up, we're going to talk about a lot of things. And some of the first things I want to touch on is some of the equipment that I use for vlogging, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I've honestly discovered that some of the equipment that I started with is actually some of the best. Of course, I've updated some, I've made some minor tweaks, I've learned how to use it better. So we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff and so much more. I would love if you guys liked and subscribed. Of course, leave comments, ask questions, just say hi, whatever. Do all those things, and you can support the channel by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. That makes this possible, which you're vloggers, so you know how important it is to support each other in many different ways. Let's get the word out there, and let's start a discussion about alternative vlogging and challenging YouTube to make different, more exciting content available to more people. I'll see all of you next time.